Well, China has called for an international conference to discuss the war in Gaza. The foreign minister has spoken with both the foreign ministers of Palestine and Israel. Wang Yi says that China is worried by the escalation and is calling for a two-state solution, too, to this crisis. Well, for more on this, let's speak to Katrina Yu in Beijing. Katrina, as I've just been saying, Wang Yi has been on the phone to the foreign ministers of both sides. What are they hoping to achieve?
Well, we've seen this past year Beijing looking to play more of a role as an international mediator. That's what Foreign Minister Wang Yi seems to be doing here. He urged both sides for an immediate de-escalation. China is very worried that this war is going to spill out into a wider conflict. So on Monday, he made two separate phone calls to the Foreign Minister of the Palestinian Authority and Israel's Foreign Minister. Now, speaking to Riyad, al-Maliki, he said that Beijing deeply sympathizes with the difficulties of the Palestinian people. He's condemned attack on civilians. He said that China is going to continue to provide humanitarian aid. And he says what Palestine needs now is security, food and medicine, and not war, weapons and ammunition. Now, in a separate phone call to Israeli Foreign Minister Cohen, he said that while every country has the right to self-defense, he urged Israel to do what it can to protect civilians. He says that Tel Aviv has a choice between war and peace, and it's imperative that it must do everything it can to prevent the situation spiraling into an even further humanitarian catastrophe. Now, these two phone calls are the highest level communication that Beijing has had with either government since the war began.
Katrina, I'm curious, do you sense a different approach to this conflict from developed and developing countries like Russia and China versus, say, the West?
Well, China, since this conflict began, has called for an immediate de-escalation and ceasefire, unlike the US and many of its allies that have called Hamas and condemned them as terrorists. Beijing has refused to do so, which has drawn much criticism from Washington and other Western nations. At the UN, though, we saw that China's representatives had more direct words. It said Israel needs to stop what it said is the collective punishment of the people of Gaza. And like some of other nations we've heard today, Beijing says the only chance of a long-term peace in that region is the establishment of a two-state solution. And Beijing has blamed the breaking out of this conflict on essentially the international community shelving the rights and interests of the Palestinian people for decades.
Katrina, you there with the latest view for us from Beijing. Thank you, Katrina.